Kia ora koutou. Sir, it's a pleasure, a genuine pleasure and a privilege to take a short call on this bill to firstly acknowledge the presence of the rangatira and the people of Ngati Tuwharetoa, of Raukawa and Arawa iwi, and to acknowledge the work and to offer our respects for the work that has been done over generations to bring us to this point, where today we'll pass into law recognition of the mana whenua, the kaitiakitanga status of the Upper Waikato iwi. So the purpose of the bill is fairly clearly and simply stated, simply to restore and protect the health and well-being of the Waikato River for present and future generations. A very short, succinct statement, but one that encompasses an enormous amount of work and effort, particularly when, as Greens, as indeed in Māori, we recognise we are talking not only about future generations of people, but also future generations of the species with which we share this world, and which have been present, and whose presence has been degraded, and which we will endeavour to bring back over time. The purpose will be the task of generations, fulfilling the purpose to restore the health and well-being of the river and the catchment. It will be a task of generations, given the appalling state of the river and its surroundings. One simple indicator of the degradation of the river is that where it starts at Taupo, there is something like 14 metres of visibility in the water. At the Waikato River mouth, there is perhaps 1 metre of visibility, a single indicator of the appalling degradation that has occurred over time of that river and the nature of the task that is confronting both Ngāiwi and the treaty partners, the Crown and their agencies. As I said, we've been very happy to support this bill as we support other settlement bills through the House, because they come very close to a couple of our key principles of social justice and of ecological wisdom, restoring the mana to the people to whom it belongs, and putting in place mechanisms, tools, which will over time improve the ecological quality, the environmental quality of the place. It's clear that in order to manage a waterway, one must of course look to the water, to the condition of the water, observe it, but critically also one must turn one's back on the waterway and look at the land that surrounds it, because only by managing the use of the land and the quality of that usage can one over time restore the quality of the waterway. We know that in order to change the land use, there will be huge resistance to some of the necessary changes. My colleague Nanaya Mahuta mentioned in passing the importance of shifting to sustainable management practice in the entire catchment of the river if we are to achieve this goal. That's a large task, it'll be a demanding task, there will be opposition to the changes necessary. But it is made easier by the fact that we do have existing models. We know it can be done. There are good examples of best practice which enables land use which is economically productive, which allows and supports communities of people, and which also enhances and improves the quality of the natural environment, which is so desperately needed in this area. There are a couple of key mechanisms or tools embedded into the Act, one of those of course being the vision and strategy, which importantly, and to the credit of the drafters of this bill, has been given a very high status in terms of the hierarchy of documents which affect land management and land use and management of the river. It's only by giving that vision and strategy a very high status in that hierarchy that we will be able to break through the resistance, where it will have some status in terms of resource management, in terms of fisheries, in terms of biosecurity. And I do compliment that's quite a courageous move, I'd have to say, by the government, by the drafters of this bill, to give the vision and the strategy that level of status of recognition in this bill. The second primary tool, the major tool in here, is of course the integrated management plan, the model, the use of catchment management practices, which is relatively new to New Zealand. It's an evolving discipline. There are no very robust models. So this Catchment management will be an evolving task, and this is a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate in partnership between Māori, the Crown agencies and communities of interest that good catchment management is not only desirable and needed, but that it is entirely possible, and we can inform not only ourselves of best practice over time, but that will be a very useful model for other areas outside of the Waikato. Critically, sir, it must be recognised Māori have lived of necessity in a bicultural world for many generations, and settlements of this nature that demand a genuine partnership approach also mean that other non-Māori New Zealanders will of necessity need to accept and even enjoy the living in a bicultural environment, working in the acknowledgement of more than one world view. There are those who will resist, who will insist that we are all one country, one national identity, but that would be to deny the ethnic differences, the richness of ethnic diversity, and the richness and depth of experience that Māori as kaitiakitanga can bring to this long and this very important and necessary process of restoration of the river. Co-management is not just a technical task or challenge. It does require acceptance and the blending of two world views. There is a strong thread of Western-based science and practice in conservation and land management, in management of flora and fauna, and indeed of our productive land. And that is very powerful. Western science has a great deal to bring to the occasion, to the table, and to the ultimate outcome. But there is also an emerging, developing awareness that we must incorporate Māori worldview. Mātauranga Māori must also be an equal partner in this, and it's possible to evolve a better practice, better frameworks for management by taking the best in an engaged and in a cooperative way of those two streams of thought, Western science and Mātauranga Māori. It's encouraging to see work being taken by the Māori Environmental Research Centre at Niwa along these very lines, looking for ways to bring together the best of Te Ao Māori, Te Ao Pākehā, in order to get frameworks, tools, practice models that will actually achieve the outcomes that we all so desperately want and need. We will all be the richer for committing to embedding the treaty relationship into day-to-day practice in terms of land management, in terms of river management, and in terms of bringing together communities of interest, knowing that there will be tension, knowing that there will be dispute, knowing that people will feel threatened and challenged, they will be forced out of their comfort zone, but in the fullness of time it's to be hoped that there will also be an acceptance. And I think all of us in this House today have a responsibility, given the level of goodwill there is to this bill and to the provisions in it, to put our weight behind mediating those inevitable disputes, the consequences of the implementation of this bill. And certainly for the Greens, I can commit to that. We will continue to lend our support to the implementation as well as the passing of this bill. We will all be the richer for it, as will the natural world that surrounds and sustains us. So finally, again, our respects, our regards to the iwi of the Waikato who are taking on this. Our colleague Tau mentioned this as a final hurdle. It is most certainly a final hurdle in terms of the legislative process, but the real work is just beginning. And again, I commit the Greens to supporting that work. Kia ora koutou.